I never thought I'd turn into that kind of senior, but one day, I caught myself doing something that made me stop in my tracks. I was complaining, again, about the same little things. The weather, my back, how things aren't like they used to be. And that's when it hit me. Was I becoming one of those grumpy old folks I used to shake my head at? The truth is, aging sneaks up on you, not just in the way you look or feel, but in the way you think and act. You don't even notice the small changes until one day you do. And I had to ask myself, is this really who I want to be? I knew the answer. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to let these behaviors define me. I was going to change. And today, I want to share 12 bad habits I developed as I got older and how I broke free from them. Some of these might surprise you. Some might hit close to home, but if you've ever caught yourself thinking, why am I like this? Trust me, you're not alone. And the good news? It's never too late to rewrite the story. But before we dive in, if you care about aging better, not just older, then hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about real, practical advice to help you stay sharp, strong, and happy as you age. So, if that sounds good to you, let's get started. 1. I became too set in my ways. I never thought of myself as stubborn, but looking back I can see it clear as day. For years, I stuck to what was familiar. New technology? Too complicated. A new workout? Not for me. Even little things, like trying a different route to the store, felt unnecessary. I told myself, why change what's working? But the truth was, I wasn't just avoiding change. I was avoiding growth. One afternoon, my grandson was visiting, eyes glued to his phone as usual. He said, "Grandpa, let me show you something." He wanted to teach me how to use an app that would let me video call family I hadn't seen in months. I waved him off, muttering, "I don't need all that fancy stuff." But later that evening I saw him laughing and chatting with relatives across the country, effortlessly staying connected. Meanwhile, I was sitting there realizing how many people I'd lost touch with, simply because I was too set in my ways to learn something new. That moment stuck with me, and I made a decision. I was done letting "I don't need that" hold me back. Now I challenge myself to try one new thing every month, whether it's technology, a different type of food, or a new way to stay active. And let me tell you, it's like a switch flipped. Life feels exciting again. I started small, learning how to use that app my grandson showed me. The first time I video called an old friend, their face lighting up on the screen, I knew I had been missing out. From there, I kept going. I tried a new workout, picked up an old hobby, and even learned how to use online banking, which, by the way, makes life a lot easier. And here's what I realized. Sticking to what you know feels safe, but stepping outside your comfort zone, that's where life really begins. Now let me ask you, what's one new thing you've tried recently or something you've been hesitant to try? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. 2. I started talking about my ailments too much. I didn't even notice it at first. It started small, an offhand comment about my stiff back, a mention of my sore knees. Then it became a habit. Every conversation somehow circled back to what was hurting, what wasn't working, what used to be better. And honestly, I thought I was just sharing, just venting. But then came the wake-up call. One afternoon, I was sitting with friends when I started in on my usual rundown, something about my shoulders aching when I slept. That's when my friend chuckled and said, "We should just record you and hit play next time." I laughed along, but inside it stung. Is that what I've become? The guy who only talks about what's wrong? I went home that day and thought about it. And the truth hit me. I was making my pain the center of my conversations. It wasn't that my aches weren't real, but did I really want to be the person people avoided because every conversation felt like a doctor's visit? That's when I made a decision. I wouldn't let my aches and pains be my main topic of conversation. Yes, my body still reminds me that I'm getting older, but that doesn't mean my words have to. So I started shifting the way I spoke. Instead of leading with my ailments, I led with things that excited me. Books I was reading, a funny story from my past, a place I wanted to visit. I realized that when I talked about things that lit me up, I felt lighter too. And something amazing happened. My conversations changed. People leaned in more, laughed more, and I felt more like myself again, not just a collection of symptoms. Now I'm curious. Have you ever caught yourself talking about your aches and pains a little too much? Or have you noticed someone else doing it? Drop a comment and let me know. What's one positive thing you're focusing on instead? 3. I lost patience with younger generations. I don't know when it started, but one day I realized I had become that person. The one shaking his head at kids these days. Their music too loud, their habits strange, their slang completely ridiculous. It felt like they lived in a different world, and not in a good way. I'd catch myself rolling my eyes at how they were always glued to their screens or complaining about things I didn't understand. Back in my day, we didn't act like this. At least that's what I thought. Then one day, I was sitting in a cafe when I overheard a group of young people talking about us. Seniors. They were saying how we were always complaining, how we didn't get technology, how we acted like everything was better in the past. And suddenly I realized I sounded just like them. The same way I was judging them, they were judging me. And the worst part? I had become the grumpy old man I used to roll my eyes at. That moment stuck with me, because deep down I knew there was a time when my generation was the one being misunderstood. So I made a change. Instead of judging, I started asking questions. Instead of assuming, I started listening. Turns out, they have struggles too, ones I never had to deal with. The pressure of social media, the stress of an uncertain future, the way the world constantly shifts beneath their feet. And once I really listened, I saw it. We're not so different after all. Now, instead of rolling my eyes, I try to connect. I ask my grandkids about the music they love. I let them show me their world. And in return, I get to share stories from mine. And you know what? It's made my life richer. Now let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself being a little too critical of younger generations? Or on the flip side, have you had a great conversation with someone younger that changed your perspective? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences. 4. I became too frugal and stopped enjoying life. I always prided myself on being responsible with money. I clipped coupons, avoided unnecessary expenses, and told myself, save now, enjoy later. But somewhere along the way, I stopped doing the enjoy later part. I became too careful. I hesitated before buying things I used to love. A nice dinner out, a trip to visit family, even a small treat for myself. I told myself, what if I need this money later? What if I outlive my savings? so I tightened my grip, watching my bank account more than I watched my own happiness. Then one day, a close friend of mine passed away. He was just a few years older than me, someone who had also been careful with his money. At his funeral, I couldn't stop thinking, what was he saving for? All those years of careful spending, of holding back, of saying, maybe next year, and now he was gone. That was when it hit me. Life isn't just about surviving, it's about living. That day, I made a promise to myself. I would budget for joy. I still plan wisely, but now I set aside money, not just for the future, but for the present. A good meal at my favorite restaurant, a short trip to see an old friend, a little splurge on something that makes me smile. And you know what? It makes all the difference. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to leave behind money, it's to leave behind memories, experiences, and a life well lived. So now let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself holding on to money a little too tightly? What's one thing you'd spend on today that would bring you real joy? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're choosing to live today. 5. I started complaining more than I realized. It happened so gradually I didn't even notice. At first, it was small things. The weather being too hot or too cold, the price of groceries creeping up, my knees aching a little more than usual. But soon, complaining became second nature. I wasn't trying to be negative. I thought I was just stating facts. But facts or not, they were all I talked about. Then one evening, I was sitting at the dinner table, going on about something or other, the news, traffic, the way things just aren't what they used to be. That's when my grandchild, barely looking up from their plate, said, "Grandpa, do you even like anything?" I froze. That hit me hard, because in that moment I realized I didn't want to be that person, the one who always found something wrong, the one who drained the energy from the room, the one people tolerated instead of enjoyed. And most of all, I didn't want my grandkids to remember me as the one who always had something to grumble about. That night, I made a decision. I was going to change what I focused on. Instead of complaining, I started practicing gratitude. Every night before bed, I forced myself to write down 3 good things from my day. Some days it was easy, a great meal, a funny conversation, a beautiful sunset. Other days it took effort, but I did it anyway. And little by little, my mindset shifted. When you look for the good, you start seeing more of it. Now, I still notice things that frustrate me, but I don't let them define my day. I choose to focus on what's right, not just what's wrong. And you know what? My grandkids have noticed. Conversations feel lighter, and I feel happier. So let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself complaining more than you realized? What's something good that happened to you today? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your positive moments. 6. I talked about the good old days too much. I used to think there was nothing wrong with reminiscing. And honestly, there isn't, until it becomes all you talk about. I didn't notice how often I started saying things like, "Back in my day, things were better," or "They don't make 'em like they used to." I'd bring up old stories, compare everything to how it used to be, and slowly, without realizing it, I started living in the past. Then one day, someone asked me a simple question that stopped me in my tracks. If the best days are behind you, why are you still here? That hit me like a ton of bricks. Because what kind of life was I living if I truly believed that the best part was already over? What message was I sending to myself and to the people around me? Yes, the past was full of great moments, but what if there were still great moments ahead? That's when I made a choice. I would stop treating the past like a museum and start creating new memories. I still cherish my old stories, but now, instead of only looking back, I ask myself, what can I do today that I'll want to remember tomorrow? I started saying yes more to new experiences, to meeting new people, to enjoying the world as it is now. I made an effort to be present, to listen to others' stories instead of just telling my own. And something amazing happened. I started feeling alive again. Now let me ask you, do you ever catch yourself spending more time in the past than in the present? What's one new memory you want to make this year? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're looking forward to. 7. I stopped caring about my appearance. It started slowly. First, I stopped wearing my nice shirts. Then I let my grooming routine slip, skipping shaves, wearing the same old comfortable clothes day after day. My thinking was simple. Who am I trying to impress? I told myself I had earned the right to relax, that looking sharp was for young people with places to be. But over time, something strange happened. I didn't just stop dressing well. I stopped feeling like myself. One afternoon, while cleaning out some old boxes, I found a photo of myself from years ago. There I was, standing tall, dressed well, smiling with confidence. And I missed that person. Not just the way I looked, but the way I felt back then, proud, energized, alive. That's when I realized it was never about impressing others. It was about respecting myself. From that day forward, I made a change. I started dressing up, not for anyone else, but for me. I put effort into my appearance, not because I needed to prove anything, but because when I look good, I feel good. And you know what? It made a huge difference. I carried myself differently. I felt more confident, more engaged with the world. Even simple things like a fresh shave or a well-fitted shirt reminded me that I still mattered. So let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself letting your appearance slide? What's one small change you can make today to feel better about yourself? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're showing up for you. 8. I became too blunt and sometimes rude. I used to pride myself on being honest. If I had a thought, I said it. No filter, no sugarcoating. I figured, I've been on this earth long enough. I've earned the right to speak my mind. If someone gained a little weight, I mentioned it. If I thought an idea was dumb, I said so. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just being real. Or so I thought. One day, I realized people were pulling away. Friends weren't calling as much. Conversations felt shorter. And then a close friend finally said it. You don't have to be so harsh all the time. It makes people not want to talk to you. That stung, but deep down I knew they were right. I had mistaken bluntness for wisdom. But wisdom isn't just about speaking the truth. It's about knowing how and when to say it. I started pausing before I spoke, asking myself, is this helpful or just harsh? Because honesty without kindness isn't wisdom. It's just rudeness. I learned that sometimes people don't need my brutal truth. They just need my understanding. So now I try to listen more and speak with kindness. And you know what? My relationships are stronger because of it. So tell me, have you ever been told you're too blunt? How do you balance honesty with kindness? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. 9. I thought I deserved special treatment for being older. I didn't notice it at first. It started with little things, expecting younger people to give up their seats, getting impatient when service was slow, feeling annoyed when someone didn't address me with the respect I thought I deserved. I had lived long, worked hard, and been through more than most, so in my mind I thought, haven't I earned a little extra courtesy? But then, something happened that made me take a hard look at myself. One day I was at a restaurant when I saw another senior snapping at a young waiter for bringing the wrong order. The waiter apologized, but the older man just huffed, "Kids these days have no respect." And in that moment I wondered, is that how I sound? It hit me. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. From that day forward, I changed my approach. Instead of expecting special treatment just because of my age, I started focusing on how I treated others. I smiled more, showed patience, and treated younger people with the same respect I wanted in return. And something amazing happened. People responded with warmth, kindness, and genuine respect. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. So now I remind myself, the best way to be respected is to be respectable. Tell me, have you ever caught yourself expecting special treatment? How do you handle respect across different generations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. 10. I stopped learning new things. At some point, I convinced myself that I had learned enough. I had my life experience, my wisdom, my routines. What else did I need? So I stopped pushing myself. I stopped reading new books, trying new skills, or exploring unfamiliar ideas. If something seemed too complicated, I brushed it off with, "I'm too old for that." Without realizing it, my world started shrinking. One day, I was chatting with an old friend. He was in his 80s and had just started learning a new language. He was excited, energized, full of curiosity. I laughed and said, "Why go through all that effort at your age?" His response stopped me cold, "Because I'm still alive." That hit me hard. I'd been acting like my learning years were behind me, but the truth is, as long as I'm breathing, I'm still becoming. That conversation changed everything. I picked up a new skill, something I had always been curious about but never tried. And let me tell you, my brain feels sharper, my conversations feel richer, and life feels exciting again. Now I make it a point to learn something new every month. It doesn't have to be big. It could be a new recipe, a new app, or even just reading about a topic I know nothing about. But the key is to stay curious. Because the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. What about you? Is there something new you've been wanting to learn? What's stopping you? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 11. I started isolating myself. It wasn't intentional. At first, I just preferred staying home. Socializing felt like too much effort. The calls, the outings, the small talk. I told myself I've earned my peace and quiet. But over time, my world got smaller. Friends stopped calling as much. Invitations became rare. And before I knew it, I was spending more time alone than I ever had before. One day I read something that shook me. Loneliness is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I felt it. I was more tired, less motivated, and even my memory didn't seem as sharp. I thought I was just enjoying solitude. But in reality, isolation was making me age faster. I knew I had to make a change. Now I schedule small social moments every week. It doesn't have to be a big gathering. Sometimes it's just a coffee chat, a quick call, or a short walk with a neighbor. And you know what? I feel alive again. Connecting with others gives me energy, laughter, and a sense of belonging that I didn't even realize I was missing. If you're feeling isolated, reach out. Even a simple "How have you been?" text can open doors. 12. I refused to accept help. For most of my life, I prided myself on being independent. If something needed to be done, I'd handle it. If I struggled, I'd push through. So when people offered help, carrying my groceries, fixing something around the house, even just giving advice, I'd brush them off. I've got it, because in my mind, needing help meant I was weak. One day, I was struggling to open a jar when my grandson reached out and said, "Let me help, Grandpa." I was about to say no, but then he added something that stopped me. "It makes me feel good to help you." That changed everything. I had been so focused on not needing help that I never thought about what it meant for others. Accepting help isn't just about me, it's about letting others feel useful, valued, and connected. Now I see help as teamwork, not weakness. I still do what I can, but when someone offers support, I don't push them away. Instead, I smile and say, "Thank you." And you know what? Life feels lighter. There's a certain warmth in letting people care for you, just like you once cared for others. Tell me, have you ever struggled to accept help? How did you overcome it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Aging isn't about becoming someone else. It's about growing into the best version of yourself. I've made my share of mistakes, but the good news, it's never too late to change. Maybe you recognized yourself in some of these habits. Maybe just one. Which one hit home for you? Let's talk in the comments. And if you're ready to age better, not just older, hit subscribe. We're in this together, and the best is still ahead.